This is the Bigger Pockets Podcast, show 178.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everybody? This is Josh Dorkin, host of the Bigger Pockets Podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. Brandon Turner. What's going on, Brandon?
Not much, Josh Dorkin. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Just, neck's a little floppy here.
For those who are not watching the YouTube version of this, if you're listening to it on your phone or something, you're missing out on some pretty good video right now. Me and Josh actually both have bobblehead dolls of ourselves.
We do. Yes. One of our guests from show 170,
Andrew Cushman.
Andrew Cushman provided those as a gift for being a guest. That was really cool of Andrew. But
yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, man, very, very nice surprise. But yeah, man, everything's good. Very excited. Today, we got a very interesting show. Lots of cool info.
Lots of making fun of you. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened here, but
I think. Well, so our guest today is actually a part-time stand-up comedian who does this in the evenings and weekends, and he decided to go after Josh today for his Detroit comments in the past. So
yeah, so it's literally like a character assassination for 45 minutes.
There's some good stuff. Good stuff in there as well. So
yeah, it's all good. Lots of cool stuff in there. But anyway, before we get into the show, we're almost there, huh? By the time this show airs, I think we might have the final Turner, the next Turner.
Yes, by the time this is live, I should have a little baby girl Turner running around. So
yeah.
So
cool.
next week,
I don't think she'll be running. If she is, there's something wrong.
Oh, my daughter will come out running. Come on, she's gonna be a Turner. She'll be talking, running. 6'9". It's gonna be amazing.
Yes,
bearded face, everything.
Oh man. Anyway, yeah. So lots of cool stuff going on. Lots happening here at Bigger Pockets HQ. We just brought on yet another hire, our head of product, Vignesh, and that's very exciting. And we've got a lot of cool stuff planned ahead for everybody. All of our site visitors. We're working on some projects that. I know we are all very, very excited to bring to you that I think is going to change a lot of people's businesses. So stay tuned as we announce that. But let's actually talk about a cool little update we've got in today's quick tip.
All right,
nice.
Today's quick tip. Thanks. Do you want me to take it?
I'll take it.
Okay, you take it.
Yeah. I didn't really get to talk a lot during this show, so. Yeah. Well, so today's quick tip, guys, we just made some updates to the Bigger Pockets local networking part of the site, the events part of Bigger Pockets. And you can find that at biggerpockets.com/events. Now, when you go to the page, you can see local events that are coming up in your area. You can look for events in other areas by zip code, just a more cohesive, comprehensive event system. So if you're looking for
and a pretty map.
Yeah, it's a pretty map. So if you're looking for networking events, go there, biggerpockets.com events. If you don't have a local event in your area, this is a great way to build one, promote it. Go ahead and just create an event on the platform, and you'll get other BP members and other locals to come and hang out and talk shop with you. So get out there, get to events, local networking. There's really nothing like it. I mean, networking as a keyboard warrior is great, but there's something more to meeting people in person. So make moves and check out biggerpockets.com/events.
There you go. And actually, I used that earlier today, and I found out there's one this week in my area, about 30 minutes from my house. So this Thursday night, I'll be going to a local meetup here. So anyway, it works because I'm going. So before we get to the show, we really got nothing else going on, right? This is pretty much it.
There's a lot going on, but
let's go. To the show.
Before we get to the show, guys, we appreciate your listenership. Thank you. Spread the word. Let people know about the Bigger Pockets podcast, and share the podcast on your Facebook feed. Tell everybody how much you love us. Get out there, tell your friends, your family to start listening, and hopefully they too will benefit from the show.
Hopefully.
Yes. All right, let's get to this thing. Today's show guest is Charlie Gow. Charlie is a real estate investor in the Michigan area.
Couple
He
areas
takes
of Michigan.
umbrage in my treatment of Detroit, as you will soon find out. And apparently he believes that I have a punchable face. So let's bring on Charlie.
It's a compliment. It's a compliment.
No, seriously, before we do, I all kidding aside and all abuse aside, Charlie's a cool guy doing some great things, and he's just a little mean to me. That's all. So give him hell, guys. Give him hell.
All right, here we
With
go.
that, let's bring him in. Charlie, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you here. What's going on, Charlie? And before I actually let you respond, let me just tell the audience that Charlie just said that I have a face, the kind of face that he just wants to punch. That was kind of interesting, man. It's not often that I talk to somebody who wants to sock me. What's going on here, dude?
I didn't say that exactly. I said you kind of have the face that I would, want to punch. That was the joke.
So I want to know, do you think
Wow.
is Josh better looking than you thought he would be, or worse looking than you thought?
I think he's actually better looking. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I actually do. So, better looking for a face you want to punch, though. Of course.
Okay,
so.
okay, of course. Well,
This show is off to such a bad start. It's not even funny.
You haven't even gotten to the best part yet.
it's gonna get.
My goodness!
It's gonna get good.
I'm really, really worried. All right, well let's do this, and I'm gonna keep in mind that we started off the way we started. So, Charlie, tell us a little bit about yourself. Why do we have him on the show anyway? This guy should have gotten through our producer. This kind of crap is ridiculous.
I guess it's kind of a miracle. I came to the United States fresh off a boat, landed in Detroit, and then, no, I'm just kidding.
That explains the hostility.
No, I was going to bring that out now, but I grew up in Michigan. I lived away out in California for a bit. I worked as a personal trainer out there, and I had exposure to real estate through my father, who had a number of commercial properties when I was younger. But to be honest, my dad was such a workaholic, it kind of turned me away from that process. So I didn't really pay attention a lot to the process. But when I was out in California, a lot of my clients, they were real estate investors. And so, a lot of times I would constantly be hearing about the deals they were doing. So that's where it kind of really whet my appetite. And then moved back to Michigan about 2007, 2008. And in that time frame, that's when they had these $5,000 to $40,000 houses. So it was just kind of a perfect storm to get started.
Nice.
$5,000 to $40,000 houses, and you are in Detroit.
Yes.
Are you in Detroit Metro, or are you in?
At the time, I lived in Grand Rapids, so kind of a completely different market. But I can't remember if it was Forbes, but I've read multiple outlets that have rated Grand Rapids one of the top real estate markets in the country. It's definitely a seller's market. I think my real estate agent there told me right now that there's 6 sellers for every listing in the county right now in Grand Rapids.
Hard to go anywhere but up when you're selling a house for $5,000.
There's a lot of places. You could still go down pretty far.
Yeah, it's true.
It is true.
It's true.
That's funny. Okay, so now
and to the point, by the way, because you open the box here, but that is why we tell people to heed caution, because that house that you buy for $5,000 may have 20, 40, 50,000 in back liens on it. There may be other negatives that come with the property. So you really do have to understand what you're getting into. A $5,000 house isn't always the deal that it looks like. And we've written a lot of articles on that. But, for those people who are like, oh, my God, I'm going to go to Detroit right now. Go. It's a great market. Detroit is blowing up like crazy. But, at the same time, there's a lot you need to know, and you got to be real careful.
Well, that's one of the things with all areas that are lower income. My area is not as low as Detroit probably, but you can buy a house for $50,000 in my area sometimes.
Hey, Brandon.
Yeah.
Hey, Brandon.
Huh?
We're talking about war zones, right? Because
not a war zone.
5 minutes before this interview, I was watching a video of you in the car with your wife, and a SWAT team was doing a shootout or something down the block from you.
Yeah, I was out driving for dollars this morning, and we saw a SWAT team pulling, the whole street was cordoned off. It was messed up. There's people everywhere, and SWAT team was with their full gear rushing into a house when I was driving by. But that's not normally like that. But that's what you get in lower price areas, apparently, even though I've never seen that before. But so what I was gonna say is in these lower price areas, it can be great for rentals potentially, as long as you don't get the SWAT team called in. However, like sometimes in those areas, the price, the value of the property is actually negative. I mean, there's properties, many of them that I would not buy even if somebody paid me $5, $10, $15, $20,000 because I could put 50 into it and it's only worth 50 at the end of the day. So why do the hassle? So anyway, just one thing to worry about or look at when you're buying in low income areas.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah. Quick tip.
By the way, as we're chatting about Detroit pops up on my Twitter feed that's in front of me. Detroit is named the best city to start a yoga studio in, according to Entrepreneur.
There you go, Charlie.
Yeah.
Who needs real estate?
You know, I need real estate. I'm going to go start doing all those pure bars and things like that.
You're good. All right. So
work on it.
Before you do that, though, we need to know your story. Before you get out and get into yoga, how did you get started with real estate? What was your first deal?
So my first deal, I lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan at the time, and I was trying to find something closer to where I worked at, which was in Muskegon, Michigan, which is roughly about 45 minutes from where I was at. So I was kind of looking all over at the time, and my real estate agent asked me if I'd be interested in looking at a condo. So the first deal is so easy. It's not going to be the greatest example, but I literally walked into this place. It was like 8 o'clock at night. The sun was going to go down. And the first thing I did when I walked in was I'm like, what is wrong with this place? I'm not seeing it. There was a creaky floor, but it had a custom bathroom, custom countertop, and I did my research, and it actually foreclosed for $148,000. So I told my agent, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to offer on it. Just let me go take a look at it in the morning because I'm wondering if there's something I missed. So I took a look at it the next morning. I told him, let's offer $38,000 on it. He's like, oh, yeah, that's a good, fair offer. Let's submit it. And I'm like, really? I thought that was kind of low. I'm like, well, submit it for 36 then. And so he submitted for 36. There was a number of lower offers, actually, but because mine was an owner-occupant offer, I actually got the property.
Okay, so your first deal, you lived in it.
Did you say that it foreclosed $148K or $48K?
$148K.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was basically a large condominium complex in Grand Haven, Michigan. It's Coast Guard City, USA, so it's a very affluent area. It's very difficult to get anything that close to the beach under 100,000. Even with a condo you could, but with a house there's no way you could get anything under 140, 150.
Wow. Got it. So was this an REO that you were offering to the bank or what? Yeah,
this was an REO.
Okay, got it.
So that's what kind of started the whole process of kind of doing the live and flips, because from working at the bank, I knew that I may not be able to compete with these investors always on that level where, throwing a cash offer, but most banks have a number of different reserve prices. They have a reserve price for an owner-occupant, a reserve price for owner-occupant cash, and then also a higher reserve for an investor and an investor with a mortgage. So knowing that, I would do, from that point forward, I always used to take that in place. And I also used to do something where I call it price creeping. But what I would do with houses going forward as well is that, let's say that I offer $30,000 the house as a little offer. Every week or so, I'd slowly creep it up $1,000. Because the worst feeling you have is when you get an offer accepted immediately on a house and you think, gosh, I could have gotten it for lower than that. So I used to always do that too as well, because it's kind of a nice way of knowing, okay, I got the very bottom end of the price that they would get from that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Price
hey, can you fill us in on the bank background? What did you do at a bank?
So I worked at one nationally very, very large bank, and then another one was a large regional bank too as well. That's actually growing pretty significantly. I think it was probably a top 15 bank in terms of assets in the United States now.
And what did you do?
I started out as basically like a teller universal banker working inside of a grocery store bank, and then I got my way up to where I was basically managing 4 branches by the time I was done.
Got it.
So you kind of have a little bit of kind of inside working of how how loans work or how banking works a little bit. So has that helped you in your career a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things my wife and I always do is that when we look at how we want to make a financial decision, we take into factor. She actually used to work at a bank too as well. And, we look at like those people that are always overdrafting an account, like what would they be doing in this situation? And what would the person that's got $100,000 in their bank, 15 investors properties, what would they be doing? And because I got to see these accounts every single day, it kind of guides me on like, what is that millionaire doing with their bank account? Like, are they eating out a lot? And you can see all these things. We don't discuss them in person, but you can see, like, the average person that overdrafts account, they eat out a lot. They spend a lot on their credit card. They do a lot of things that the person that has large balances their bank account isn't doing. So I definitely took a lot from that process, especially the underwriting process, because I learned a lot that not all banks are the same, not all credit unions are the same, and you can't really say that about one bank and do that versus the other.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to work at a bank as well back in the day. I mean, I was kind of the same thing. I started as like a personal banker at a bank, and I did loans for, home equity lines of credit and all that stuff. And yeah, like you kind of get this inside look at what does an underwriter look at? Like, what does debt to income mean? What does loan to value? What credit score do they care about? I mean, it's kind of like I like to use this analogy. It's like a combination lock. Like if you can get the combination right, you're going to get your loan approved. But you got to know what the combination is, and then you got to enter it in correctly. And anyway, so it's one of the benefits, I guess, of having a job at a bank. You kind of learn those things. Just to throw this out there, if people are interested in learning more about that, there is just a free ebook that we offer on BiggerPockets. If you go to biggerpockets.com/bank financing, you can read this ebook. I think it's called like unlocking 12 steps to unlocking unlimited bank financing or something like that. I don't know. It's just a free book. People can check out, no opt-in or anything like that. So check it out. All right, back to your story. So you started with a condo and you bought this to live in. And what came next?
So that condo, I ended up having to move again for work because they kept getting different promotions. And so I ended up moving back to Grand Rapids. So I rented that place out. I actually had a roommate at that time that was paying my entire mortgage. So then I rented it out to another person who's a teacher. Rented it out for 3 years. And then the home I bought in Grand Rapids, that was probably my first true flip. I put in about $10,000 of materials, but I did almost all the work myself. And that was kind of what really got me going with, okay, this is what flipping really is. I mean, there was definitely times where I had no running water. I even went one day where my gas got turned off by accident. It was definitely a unique process, but I learned a lot about how I want to value my time going forward. And in particular, at the time, I think I was only making like $28,000 at the bank. So a lot of the work that these people would charge me, they're charging me $50 an hour. How I would look at it is, well, if I can do this in 4 times the amount of time that you can do it, maybe it makes sense for me to do it myself. Whereas now, income's a lot different. I have to value in, okay, well, if I take this and I can do it in a half hour and you can do it in 20 minutes, it's not worth it for me to pay myself to do it when I could pay you to do it and your hour pay is less than my hour's pay.
Yeah. Yeah. I look at that a lot when I'm doing projects is like, is this worth it, my dollar per hour? I mean, 2 weekends ago, I spent like 6 hours underneath a house doing plumbing. And the only reason why is because we got 4 bids from people and the cheapest one was like $3,000. And I'm like, for 6 hours of work, $3,000, I will go under the house. And I did it in 6 hours and it was done. And I don't do it very often, but at that moment, plumbers were so crazy busy. So they were just charging outrageous rates. So I sucked it up and did it. But yeah, it's very rare for me.
That's a great story. Can we talk to our guest here? Charles, were you living at the flip at the time that you were doing it? The second deal?
Yeah, I was living at the flip at the time I was doing it. So, I literally redid the floor. I did everything, but I think one time at one point the shower, I actually broke off the shower knob when I was trying to basically replace it because it was corroded that bad.
Nice.
So I literally had to turn off the water, and then I had to get somebody out. And so I was going to a buddy's house maybe a mile away and showering in the morning, but I was sleeping there. So I got that whole process through, but it really let me value how I want to pay, what I want to pay for everything. So flooring, I typically like to still do flooring myself because I can do it very quickly. But tile, plumbing, electrical, I always contract that out now.
Okay. That makes sense. So essentially you started out by what we like to call kind of a different way, but you still started out house hacking, this idea of using your initial property as an investment. So even that first condo, even though you lived there, didn't you say you had a roommate, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so the roommate helped you obviously be able to live for free or close to while you were living there. Then you moved out of the property, kept it as a rental, and you moved into a live and flip. Another way to do house hacking is to live and flip. How did that live and flip turn out at the end of the day? What did you buy it for? And did you make some money on it? Did you sell it, or what's it at?
I actually I flipped that house after living it for 2 years. I think I made, after everything, including the transfer taxes, 17,000 off of it.
Okay.
But I only bought it for 37. I only put about 10 into it. So pretty solid investment in that end. And then I didn't have to pay taxes on that too, because I lived in the home 2 out of the last 5 years. And that's actually kind of a strategy we've implemented.
Yeah, can you explain that real quick for people who aren't familiar with that strategy of living in the house for 2 years? What does that mean?
So basically, if you live in the home 2 out of the last 5 years, it's like a homestead property exemption. You do not have to pay taxes on that gain as long as it's under a certain amount. And the amount is so high, I want to say it's like 250,000. I don't know the exact amount, that I've never even come close to it. But it's kind of a nice tool, because instead of having to pay a lawyer to do a 1031 tax exchange, which can be complex, it's kind of a way that my wife and I have upgraded homes slowly. But on the flip side, I think my friends and family think it's crazy that we've moved every 2 years into a new home. And it's gotten to that point where my wife and I, if we buy a house, I joke around, well, the next 2 years from now, we'll be living in a different house. So you can make your decision then. And so...
Well, I mean, it's a cool strategy, especially for people just getting started with real estate. Like, there's ability to buy a house that needs work, and you can fix it up. And as long as you live there, for a couple of years, you may not have to pay any capital gains tax on the gain at all. And I've known people like that for 10, 15 years. Every 2 years, they just do it over and over and over again. Of course, we're not CPAs, so make sure you guys consult with a good tax person for the specific laws and rules on how that works. But it's a cool strategy. So,
and I mean, I'd say it's also likely an easier strategy when you're single or without kids. I think upending and moving kids every 2 years can certainly be a challenge. I know doing it once in a blue moon is a challenge.
Kind of like having twin newborn preemies a year ago for me.
Yeah.
This guy just called you out, Josh.
They won't
he just
resent
called you out.
Anything when they're 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He's just being combative, man. He's just combative.
No, dude, I love you. You got the, I just love that face. I just love it.
I love it so much I want to hit it.
I got a buddy.
If I ever get divorced and get married again, I'm going to invite you to be in the wedding. Which is
nice guy.
I have not yet been invited to attend one of our users' weddings, but I did get this lovely bobblehead.
You did get a bobblehead
recently, so no, that's enough. Cool, man. That's cool. All right. Well, listen, I personally wouldn't do it. I know moving once. We just moved last year with my kid, and that was difficult, and you can't even imagine. Moving with twins. Of course, we'll find out soon when Brandon moves after his twins are about to show up.
I ain't having twins. No. Yeah, I couldn't handle twins yet. How are you handling twins? Is that overwhelming, as they say?
Well, how do you think? Do I look tired?
You look a little tired.
You seem a little grouchy, too.
Oh, ouch. I handle pretty good. I don't sleep a lot naturally, but my wife is, I couldn't do it without her. She definitely helps out a lot. Actually, I really help her out a lot, if anything. I think right now in the last year, we've had a job change, a job loss, a move, and preemie twins. So from here, it can't get any more stressful.
And you're in the middle of a house flip right now, right? Or several, right?
2 house flips right now.
Okay,
yeah,
so
why not create more work for yourself?
Why not do a little more?
We've gotten to that point now where kind of getting the idea of the wife on board. I really am trying to automate this so that way my wife can manage it. So over the last couple of years, we've slowed down a little bit so I could kind of teach her everything she knows, because at this point I have a job that has a very significant W-2 income, and in addition to that, because of a health scare I had a number of years ago, I don't think I want to go the fully real estate employed route, just because I'm not sure if I could get health benefits from any insurance company. So that's kind of something we've considered. And so my wife is kind of taking over. She just got a real estate license, and she's kind of been able to manage that. We still run into the issues of contractors trying to charge rip-off prices, but nothing that any other female I think has probably dealt with in that case. And it's fortunate that actually happens as much as it does.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you work in a full-time W-2 job. Your wife is getting her license. You're flipping 2 houses. How many deals are you doing now? I mean, you so it sounds like 07, 08 was kind of the beginning. We're at what, 7-8 years now you've been doing this. What have you accomplished in the time that you've been involved in real estate?
So I'm on deal 15 and 16 right now. We had, I think the most I've done in is 1 year is 3. This year I just sold 1, so I guess I'm going to close on 3 houses this year and hopefully acquire 1 or 2 more.
And
that idea
flips or rentals?
Flips. We because I had some health scare a number of years ago. One of the nice things about the real estate is that this health scare that I had, it would have crippled me financially if I was not able to invest in real estate. But because of that, I really didn't come away with any debt. But I pretty much had to commit almost a year's of my salary just towards medical expenses a number of years ago.
Wow.
So we sold off a portion of our portfolio to pay for that. That really slowed us down. I think we only did 1 each of those years. And then, unfortunately, I wish we could have held on to those because 3 of the rental properties that we sold, if I could have just held on to it now, I could have quit my job now because of the amount of the rental appreciation that's been in that area in comparison to what I bought it for. I'd be making probably, I think, $2,800 and net after all my expenses, and that's including a property management company.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that is one of the benefits of real estate, right? It gives you that freedom to be able, when things happen, when crap hits the fan, I mean, you've got the ability to, hey, I've got this income, I've got this asset I can sell over here to be able to pay for my life or while my job is going to these things. So I mean, just another benefit that we don't really talk about much, but it really is a powerful asset to have. So that's very cool. Well, cool. All right. So you've been doing it sounds like mostly flips, but a few rentals in there as well. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about your average. When you're doing a flip, first of all, how do you find properties? And then, what price range are you looking in?
At the beginning, it was definitely multiple listing service, so MLS. My real estate agent, a lot of times I would be getting properties that were actually his listings. A lot of times he could let me know, like, okay, I have a property I'm probably about to get on the market, so I could vet the deal very quickly to figure out, what I needed to do for get funds. More recently, I've been doing a lot with bird dogging, so the mailman. The one I found that's been very successful is actually the foundation specialist because they're dealing with these people that have 20 to 30,000 foundation problems, and they're not going to be able to sell it to a typical investor because it won't get it approved with conventional financing. The other thing too is that my background at the bank is that I've heard or known of a number of instances where condos. So for example, most condos are not FHA eligible just because of the HOA requirements. In a number of instances, if a HOA is doing poorly or about to go bankrupt, they won't even be eligible for financing for conventional. So it's only cash buyers, which I picked up a property condo, $17,000. That a number of years, 2 years before that, was selling for $60,000 to $80,000 specifically for that reason. So those type of deals, they've been very influential for me. And then what's better now is that now that I don't work at the bank, I don't have to worry about it being I think it's like a non-compete agreement, or I'm not supposed to purchase properties that the bank owns in that sense.
Gotcha. I want to dig in on the mailman and foundation specialist thing. We talk a lot about marketing. We talk a lot about, just putting the word out to your network. But, and I think we've already heard somebody talk about mailman as a source of leads, but foundation specialists, I mean, that's really creative. Can you kind of dig in a little bit more on that?
So I had basically 3 guys come out to my house and quote. And the last guy that came out, he really, really wanted the deal. He was young and hungry. He had only been in business for 2 years, and he actually worked for one of the other people that had quoted me. And, I told him, like, honestly, I'm not sure why I would go with you because, you said you worked for this company, they trained you. So if you're doing a good job, I can imagine that they're probably doing just as a good job, not better. Plus, I have this company where, if the bank or the person buying the house sees, hey, this basement system company worked on the foundation, I know that they're reputable. I've never heard of that. It's just one less question I have to deal with. And so he said, well, he basically just straight up asked me, like, well, how can I add more value to you? And I'm like, well, this job you quoted me for $6,000. Like, how often do you run into projects that people can't afford it? And then he basically brought up, like, all the time, actually. And so I'm like, so what happens in those cases? He's like, well, we offer financing to them if we can, but if we can't, then I pretty much just don't get the job. And I'm like, well, how about you just, letting that person know that, maybe they could go through somebody to purchase a home from them and then maybe alleviate that problem, maybe even allow them to still live in the house. So one of my first purchases from that, I actually allowed the person to stay in the home afterwards. They were paying me basically what their mortgage was anyways, but because I got my mortgage at today's rates, which were absolutely low and a better price, I was able to net money right off of it. They treated it like their home, and then we were able to get the foundation fixed. And I ended up making about $35,000 off that property when I finally sold it.
Wow!
On top of the cash flow I was getting from it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, this is a clever idea. I mean, like it wouldn't even be just foundation guys especially, but roofing too. I mean, I'm gonna talk to some of the roofing contractors I know and just say, hey, if you got leads, here, give them my business card. I just think it's a fantastic idea because a lot of people can't afford those $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, expenses on their house. So they just let it go forever till they finally lose it. So yeah, very clever. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I've applied that to septic, pretty much everything, any type of major job. Framing, I definitely have done with framing for sure too. But the foundation specialist guy in particular, he's my biggest lead. And the best part about it too is that I don't even have to pay him for the referral. He just is happy that I'm going to get him this big job.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of
a great idea.
Yeah, that's what networking is all about. Like you scratch their back, they scratch yours, and I think that's awesome. So very, very cool. All right, so let's talk about your more recent stuff. So like number wise, like what are you buying a flip for? What are you typically putting into them, and what are you typically selling them for?
It's not really a cookie cutter. It's kind of all over the board. I can get a condo for under $20,000. I can get, I'm working the flip that I'm working right now. I bought for $60,000. It's actually very close to a lake. It's pretty much
16 or 60.
60.
Okay.
So not quite into Detroit yet, but we're getting close to there. So
okay.
And then I think the most expensive property I bought that I flipped was probably $77,000.
Okay.
So I'm kind of in that price range where I'm comfortably paying cash for properties now at this point, or at least my offer is cash, even though I'm finding different ways to actually obtain the financing for that to offer cash.
And what is that? I mean, how are you buying them if you're, what financing methods are you using?
I've done, the BRRRR method. So I basically use a home equity line of credit off of my current home to basically draw money off of that to do that and pay for the house. I've done, 0% interest credit card offers. I think all my credit cards, I have very high balances on that as well. Barring a little bit of private funds from family. I am very familiar with which banks do underwriting with verified assets and which ones don't. So that's been another asset I've used. A loan before that was $35,000, no verification of income, just stated income assets. And then it was basically closed in 3 days. I had to pay a higher interest rate for it, but it was no questions asked.
Really? I didn't know that stated income loans were happening at all anywhere.
As long as it's not attached to a mortgage, which would make it apply under NINA, like the no income, no asset loans for mortgages, but it's just a general unsecured loan. Actually, Discover still does them, I know of right now, because I did one just recently.
Got it. Yeah. So you're just getting an unsecured business line and you're using it towards your real estate. You're not getting a real estate specific loan on a particular property.
Yeah, and then kind of a quick tip, which one of the things that I think is very important is that understanding the underwriting process is that there are a number of banks that it is an automatic computer decision for the type of loan. So when you ask, in my case, especially if you're self-employed, there are a lot of times where the bank will immediately say, nope, you're denied, and the computer makes the decision, you can't go back on it. But there's a number of other large banks too where there's called a second pass, which means that a person will look at that and say, okay, you know what? This may not meet our guidelines, but it does pass the eyeball test, so they will still allow that loan to go through. And I can tell you that it's one of the first things you should know up front before deeming your credit, asking a bank is that if this loan is not approved initially, would I have opportunity to appeal that, or is there a second person that takes a look at it to see if it might still qualify? And you'd be surprised how often you get those pre-approval letters in the mail, you go through it, and the computer turns it down, and then you've had a ding to your credit. Whereas the credit union I work with right now, for example, they actually have 2 people look through, especially because of the relationship I've developed with them. And so I always go through them knowing that if the deal is tight, they're going to give me that benefit of the doubt based on that relationship. It's always a second and third pass with that underwriting system that they have.
Okay. Got it. And you're just talking about the ding because they had to pull your credit. It's not like a penalty because you got denied or anything.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, first of all, I want to point out that I like the fact that you're very creative in how you finance these deals. I mean, you've used a lot of different methods. I think I've said that a million times before, but it's very much like a toolbox. The more tools you have in your toolbox, the more projects you can take on. So you definitely have a lot of tools in kind of your mental toolbox. So applaud you for that. What is your favorite way to finance a deal? I mean, do you have something that you're like, man, if I could only do this the rest of my life? I mean, besides cash, if you're just loaded, like, what's your favorite?
I just kind of started exploring Harmony loans, so I don't know if that's going to be. But the one that I've really done recently is I actually maxed out my 401k through work, so I've actually established a pretty high balance in there. They will actually allow me to do, I think it's a 3.25% loan, and it's taken out of my check, but they'll allow me to take up to 75%. So basically, I'm getting 2 investments out of it. Every dollar I put in is getting invested into my 401k, into stocks and mutual funds. But then 75% of that I can draw back out, kind of like it's like a self-directed 401k, but it's not because I'm just taking that as a loan. So I'm getting 2 investments out of the same dollar that I'm putting in. And so that's actually been my favorite method. So I'm getting, 7 to 8% out of my portfolio and then the company stock plan. But then on top of that, I'm also investing in basically real estate, rental properties and such, which is allowing me to basically make further income off of that. So if you add all my gains off of that same dollar I've invested, I'm getting 40 cents in the dollar back on an annual basis off of it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Nice.
I like that.
Yeah.
I've not done that, but it's smart. All right, so let me move on to kind of the last little question set that I have for you. I want to talk about losing money because you mentioned just when we were talking before the show that right now you're in the middle of a flip that you're not going to make a lot of money on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, if we were to break even on this deal, I would be overjoyed. But there's a lot of factors to it, and not to make excuses, but there's one of the things is that my wife and we moved from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Novi, Michigan, and so I didn't I knew exactly what I would pay in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but I realized that what I'd be paying would be more expensive in a bigger market. So that alone, 10 to 20% right off the top, and then I didn't realize that how long it would take me to get my team or my boots on the ground. So in Grand Rapids, I could pretty much find a new drywall guy, a new framer pretty quickly because I had such a big book, and I underestimated how long it would take me to get going with my group there. The other thing that this is probably the biggest issue is that where I'm at, the properties in Wolverine Lake, it's only a township of 2,000 people. The inspector that does all the inspections for our work, he works 2 hours, 1 day a week, while he's working for the next township next door. So if we don't get something done by Tuesday, we got to wait a whole nother week. And so literally I've spent 2 to 3 months just waiting for this guy just to come out. And I mean, I've done everything. I've brought the girls donuts to hey, could you remind them, sending them emails. I even had my wife bring the twins in there and wait for him because he was notorious for not coming in during his lunch on that Tuesday anyways. And the work, this house was so notorious. It was so well known in this super small town, even though it's only 25 miles away from Detroit, that there's no way I could have gotten away with doing anything off book. My neighbor across the street told me that, well, not my neighbor, but the neighbor to that house said that she just did the roof on the weekend and the person that come out. There's no way I could have done anything like that. Every step of the process had to be to a T to what the inspector wanted because he had already had this eye out on this property for a number of years anyways. And it was, I'm not going to swear, it was such a hole that people used to be like, oh, that house over there with the dump truck and all the junk? I live 2 blocks over that. They use it as a landmark.
Nice.
That's how bad it was.
That's awesome.
On top of that, I had a contractor that worked for me, did a lot of sub jobs for me and smaller jobs. Based off of the work he had done in the past, I thought he would have been able to do this job, but it was just too much. He bit off more than he could chew, and then that just delayed things as well. That he didn't even get along with the inspector, which was even worse. But a whole slew of factors, and the fact that we were trying to balance a new job, new home, as well as newborn kids too as well. So I mean, I definitely learned a lot from it. I won't make a lot of those mistakes again. And if I can restrict it to maybe a 10 to 15K loss, I would still consider it a success, because I've learned every process of building a house from the ground up, including the tear down, of what all the permit requirements are too as well.
Hey, Charlie, I'm glad you brought all that up. Some really, really good points there. I took a few notes. So one, considering the cost of work in a different market, that, we're not talking going from Detroit to New York. You're talking about how far is the town you worked in and Grand Rapids? It's
a 2-hour time frame, and one of the things that contributes to is that it's such a rural area, or not really a rural area, but it's just a difficult spot to get to, that even though it's a 5-mile drive for some people, that's a 30-minute drive. So they have to factor that in when they quoted me prices too as well. So just a lot of factors. And then also, this was actually my first flip I ever dealt with that was septic and well.
Gotcha. Yeah, but so I guess my point is, there's all these considerations that I'm glad you brought up. That going from more urban to a more rural area, there's going to be different factors you've got to consider. The time to get a new contractor, time to get new vendors, the inspector. I mean, that's a huge one. If there's one guy who's inspecting the entire town 1 day a week for 2 hours, that's a real pain. I mean, that's going to slow down your process, presumably, if they have to come and approve things over and again. And so, I love this. I think it's really easy for us to say, yeah, flipping a house is great. And once you figure it out, you figure it out. But, you've been doing this, and despite it, you're still learning, because, little tweaks that you make, you may not have adjusted for or planned for. The complications that come with it. So I just want to reiterate that for those folks that are listening, because it really, in the beginning, it's scary and you're always afraid that you're going to screw up. And, a lot of people never get started because of that. And what you realize once you're doing this for a while is you're going to screw up. Things are going to happen. You use it as a learning experience, and you make sure you don't ever screw up again doing the same thing. And It's a victory, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, moral victory, I guess, was what I'm going to learn from it, but not pocketbook victory, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Sure. I feel like every time. I mean, I've lost money on a couple flips, and I'm doing a flip right now that I'll break even on. I might make a few $1,000 maybe, but I always I don't hate doing. I don't regret doing any of those. I mean, even the one I'm working on right now, I'm working with a brand new partner on it. We figured out a ton of stuff in the process in a new town that I'm not used to flipping in, and we're figuring stuff out. So, I mean, even if I break even if I had lost money on it, I would still consider it a win, because it's partnership. We got another one under contract we'll make $50,000 on, hopefully. And so, again, it's all just, when you look big picture, it's not the end of the world. And I hope that people know that are listening to this, that, not to get scared away from the fact that you might someday lose money. You shouldn't just be, fearful of it. So if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently? Let me ask you that.
I mean, there is so many different factors for it. One, I don't think we would have rushed into as much we did. I think it was we hadn't done a deal in a year, and I think it was that urgency, we got to get a deal. And I know a lot of new investors I see in BiggerPockets, it's time to do a deal. I think you have to go back into, you have to be humble enough to keep remembering what got you to where you were in the first place. So I should have gotten the vendors in place for sure, which that could have been a little bit difficult because you're not working off any referrals, but you also can't call the guys on Google because they're not going to be priced anywhere where you want to do it. So vetting that more, I would have utilized BiggerPockets contacts for sure. In hindsight, with what I know now, I've learned quite a bit. And then I called the inspector. I actually spoke with them, and I actually had a relationship with the office even more. But I would have done even more due diligence with that small town, because it never occurred to me that it's a possibility some dude who's an inspector only works 2 hours a week. You're killing me. I mean,
he's living the Tim Ferriss life, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's literally on his lunch break. That was probably the most frustrating aspect of it. And we had a period of time where I had told him, I'll pay whatever amount I need you, but I do not have a roof on the house. I need you to approve the framing so I can put the roof on. And he basically didn't do anything, so it got rained on for 6 days in a row. So we tarped it, but I mean, there's only so much you could put tarp on a roof without, keeping the water out in that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, thank you for sharing that. And again, obviously, hopefully, it's all uphill from there. But anything before we move on to the fire round that you want to add? Any kind of, stories or anything that you think people might like hearing or learning from?
I got a kind of a funny story, and I actually didn't mention this, but I did do a land contract, and it was the biggest disaster ever. But I think you'll find this funny. So I had a guy that did plenty of great work for me, did roofing, tile, and he came to me and he's like, "Hey, Charles, my wife from Mexico is actually moving to the United States, and I need to put her up in her house." And I was like, "Eduardo, I've met your wife. Like, you have a wife and 2 kids. You live over on Boston." And he comes up to me and it gets even closer, and he's like, "So my wife doesn't know about my wife in Mexico."
Oh my
and so I'm like, what do you want me to do? What? I mean, like, I don't know. If my wife ever found out that I was helping you hide one wife from the other, I'd be castrated. So he's like, "This house that I'm fixing right now, like, what are your plans with it?" I'm like, "I'm either going to rent it or land contract it." And he's like, "Well, can I land contract off of you? I'll do the roofing and he did like about $5,000 worth of labor. I paid for the materials." And so, long story short, his wife ended up not moving from Mexico because he ended up getting her to stay there. But then he put in 2 tenants that basically did not pay him money. So then I had to foreclose on him essentially because we had to record it to keep the city off our backs from housing code. And then on top of that, then I had to turn around and get these tenants out, and the tenants stole all the appliances on the way out. So another learning experience. But even with your contractors, and this has happened to me twice now, and which a little bit different scenario both times. But even though your contractors have done good work for you and you trust them, you still got to continue to vet them every bit of the process. I mean, I would have never taken no money down. But considering that he had done a lot of the labor, as well as he had done all his other work for me in the past, I felt I could have trusted him, but it just didn't work out in that scenario.
Yeah, yeah. And never hide a wife in Mexico would be another tip, right?
Oh, yeah. You know, Josh.
All right. So, by the way, yeah, I think the idea, like, when you go outside of the bounds of what your business normally is, when you do things like that, like I'm going to help out a buddy, I'm going to help out a contractor friend of mine. Like those are the times in my life I've always been screwed, is when I go outside of how it should be done and try to help out other people. I mean, my lead contractor is the one that burned down my property last year. Like he was rented from me and burned it down, and because he was angry. And anyway.
Yeah. I always try to keep those lines, and for me, it's like I'm going to keep it very clear. You're going to go through the exact same process that anyone else. Yeah, you're my first cousin, or you're my this or that. I'm not going to give you any. You're not going to get treated any differently here than anyone else. If you expect that, let's not even start. And I think that's a good precursor to kind of getting into bed with friends, family, contractors, whatever it is that you do.
Yeah. Wise words from Josh Dorkin.
Oh yes.
All right.
Cool.
Well, hey, let's move on to the next segment of the show called the Fire Round.
It's time for the Fire Round.
All right, let's get to the questions. Number 1, how would somebody figure out how to remodel a flip to make it more appealing to buyers? In other words, how do I know what to do to the property in order to get it to sell the best?
My wife would probably like this answer, but I think a lot of the ideas that she gets, she kind of handles that aspect, is she does a lot with Pinterest. She watches a lot of HGTV, but I think those really help you keep a pulse on what's trendy, and trendy is what sells houses, especially to the female buyer or the people that are willing to spend more. So I would definitely use those resources to kind of get an idea from that. Outside of that, I think, a lot of it's just common sense. You got to factor in, if I add a bathroom here, is the market going to support a $5,000 increase if it cost me $5,000 to put it in?
There you
Right
go.
on. Right on.
Cool. Next question is house hacking the safest way you would excite somebody about investing in real estate?
I definitely don't think so if you're a more affluent person, because I generally think that when you're house hacking, you're typically house hacking, in my experience, in B or C areas, not the A areas. So it may be difficult for somebody to give up, their nice house in the hills to go live in a condo or a duplex next to somebody that, is, I don't want to insult, Josh Dorkin or something like that, in that aspect.
Well,
Josh has got nothing. Just shaking his head.
I don't know how much money you paid this guy, Brandon, but my
Quite a
God.
bit. I do know people who have house hacked. Like I have some friends that live down in Portland in a very expensive area, like in the town of Beaverton, in this nice, really nice area. Spent a lot of money in their house, and their house has a basement apartment that they bought, and they bought the house with their in-laws, like my friend's in-laws, and the in-laws live in the basement, they live in the top, and they split all the rent, and so they're living cheaper than I am. In a much better neighborhood, much better town, much more expensive house. So it can be done in those better areas, but yeah, typically I see it, like I started this crappy little duplex in a C-class area.
I feel somebody would know off the bat if they were open to it. I don't think it's one of those things you would bring up to somebody, because I feel like most people have already kind of considered that process, especially with duplexes and whatnot. So yeah. The other thing too is that if you have a very large home, like there's no way my wife would ever let somebody live with us with 2 kids. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So if you have a family, I think that's kind of a non-consideration.
Yeah, house hacking different for everyone, obviously.
Have that separate, unless you have that separate, like a in-law suite or something, off to the side. So
yeah, there you go. All right, number 3. What should someone look out for when they're dealing with an HOA? If they've never had to, never dealt with that before, what should they look out for if they're going to deal with a homeowners association kind of committee people?
Pets, if they're allowed, what's required for it. If you can rent them, because there's a number that don't allow it. Age requirement, which is an obvious one. And then lastly, the actual financial status of the HOA itself. So going back to the example I had, if you have an HOA that is almost going bankruptcy, then you have an issue where now anybody who wants to buy that house from you down the road when you want to liquidate it, they have to pay cash, which that's going to drive everything down in the area. So knowing whether it's in good financial condition is a big one too as well. And then also I like to see what assessments they've done over the last 5 years. If they're happy with assessments, like, assessment for siding, hey, I have a brick condo, why am I paying that? Or upgrading a second floor deck, well, I'm a first floor deck, that's just giving me more shade. Those are the things I would probably focus on most.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good advice.
I want to add one that I haven't heard mentioned in a lot of our shows when we've talked about HOAs. A lot of HOAs are restrictive on the exterior of the property, particularly when we're talking about like a home in an HOA area. So, the home may have to fit specific requirements, specific criteria for what it's got to look like. You can't paint it a different color. You can't, do the lawn the way you want to do the lawn. You can't, landscape it the way you want to landscape it. So, there's a whole lot to consider when you're looking at an HOA. Just make sure you're up to speed on it if you're doing that.
Actually, that is a good one, because I read the entire HOA documents anyways, but I almost bought a condo once that required that if you were on the second or third floor, you could not have regular flooring. You had to have carpet.
Interesting.
And that was unique too. So
yeah, it's important. I think the key there is make sure you read the documents. Read the docs. Yeah, read them, because you never know. Yeah, I got a lead last week on a vacation property out of the beach. This cool little house out there. They wanted $50,000, which was nothing. I was like, oh great. And then I find out that you can't rent the property. Period. Not vacation rental, not monthly rental, nothing. So screw that. All right, number 4.
All right, last question. Number 4. What is a comfortable amount of flips a new investor should try and achieve in their first year? That's an interesting one. 1.
Yeah, I mean, I would just focus on that first one. If you're thinking ahead, then you're probably not having the right focus. I just really think, like my wife and I, we do an exercise, and this is going to kind of plug into when we get into a few questions, but we do an exercise by Brian Tracy where it's basically write all the list of all the goals that you want to accomplish in your life, and then from that, if you could accomplish any one of those goals in the next 24 hours, which one of those would impact your life the most? And so, looking at that, I really just think it's just one. I mean, get that first one out of the way, and then let's see what happens from there. I mean, if you take a $5,000 loss and you're still trying to get on these 5 flips a year because you set that goal, then that's not realistic. You need to be able to adjust your goals as it happens.
Shockingly good advice from the man with the forked tongue.
All right. That wraps up our fire round. Now let's move on to the famous four. Ooh, famous four. All right. These questions are asked every week to every guest. And I know, Charlie, you listen to the show, so you know what's coming. But number one, what is your favorite real estate related book?
I read so much, and it's going to be cliche to see the Robert Kiyosaki, but what I would say is that for my job, I drive probably 4 or 5 hours a day. I really treat BiggerPockets as like a university on its own. So what I mean by that, and I've said this in the forums, is that I've calculated that I do 3 podcasts a day is what I listen to on average. And it's not always BiggerPockets because I've gotten through them. But if you look at that, 15 of those a day, that's almost equivalent to a 15-credit course. So I've kind of treated BiggerPockets University as kind of a course. So I would actually say BiggerPockets would be really my favorite at this point, because everything else I've read was kind of stuff that got me started, and little things I picked up along there. Not that I don't read, it's just that I think I'm learning the most right now from BiggerPockets right now, and so why not utilize all these free resources?
That's awesome. Love it. That's awesome. Best thing you've said all day. So speaking of which, what do you actually do for a living? I don't think we actually asked that. And what is your job right now, where you drive around so much?
I sell drugs to older people like your grandma for a living.
You're a drug dealer.
Yes, legally.
Okay. Just making sure we got that on the record. You're a drug dealer,
but not like Colorado, Washington drug dealer. You're like pharmaceutical, correct?
Like prestige worldwide type of drugs. So,
the expensive ones.
Expensive ones, yeah. So I work I work for one of the largest medical device pharmaceutical companies in the world, and I'm primarily in the immunology sector, so I do have highly specialized medications.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Awesome. All right, so let's get back to the famous 4 questions here. Favorite business book?
Brian Tracy, Maximum Achievement. It's kind of more of a motivational book than anything, but I think he has a lot of exercises, a lot of things that help put things in perspective, and more importantly, help you with focusing in on what's most important to you.
Cool.
Right on.
Cool. I just read Brian Tracy's Psychology of Sales, which was fantastic, so I'll have to pick up that one as well. So, cool.
Nice.
Number 3.
All right, my number 3, hobbies. What do you do for fun?
I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie, so I like to do all kinds of sports, skydiving, you name it. I also have done some stand-up comedy where part of my act is I basically just rip on people in the crowd. So unfortunately, my act today.
You don't have much of a career, my friend.
Oh, come on. I think it's going to be longer to live than that Japanese car that you're driving.
He's got something. All right. Number 4. What do you believe, Charlie Gao? What do you believe sets apart successful investors from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think the biggest thing is knowing how to overcome that. You're going to have a point where there's going to be a setback, whether it's at the very beginning or at the end. So it's appropriately responding to that setback, but more importantly, making sure that it doesn't happen again. In my field, when I'm selling drugs to people, I get questions all the time about my drugs, and I don't know the answer. But I always tell my clients that, this is going to be the last time I do not know the answer. And I kind of liken it to my approach towards real estate. This is going to be the last time I make the mistake because I'm going to learn from it. So I guess that's what I would say outside of the cliche, motivational, all that stuff of what I would say otherwise.
Cool.
Right on. Excellent. All right, man, before we let you go, where can people find out more about you?
Just launched my website. iBuyHousesMichigan.com. I'm on Facebook and all the social media stuff, but probably the easiest way is actually BiggerPockets. I'm starting to contribute a lot more on the site more recently.
Perfect. There you go. And do you have a website for your failing comedy business?
No, but I'll probably put this in the front page for it because I think this is pretty funny. Especially, can all the viewers see your facial reactions to all this?
If they're watching on YouTube, yes.
I'm gonna do like one of those like quick 1-second snaps where you can see your face and as it progresses from like agony to like sadness to
it's just disdain, man. It's just disdain. No, this is listen. We definitely appreciate it. All joking aside, great stuff. Congrats on all the success and good luck to you. And obviously, I give you a hard time about your comedy business because you're just terrible. But that aside, good luck having tomatoes thrown at you next time you're on stage.
Thank you.
All right, Charlie. Well, it was really good having you today. We will definitely see you around BiggerPockets.
Hey, Charlie, take it easy, man.
Take it easy. Bye.
All right, guys, that was Charlie Gow. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Hopefully you weren't cringing as much as I was at the abuse that I took. And hopefully you learned a thing or two as well. Yeah, good guy, doing some cool things. And as we had just talked about towards the end of the show, it doesn't matter how many deals you've done. I mean, there's always things that can happen. There's always complications that you didn't quite think about. And so, keep an eye out for that and be ready for it. There's no way to avoid completely being surprised, I think. And I think that's one of the big lessons that I walk away from this one with.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like it's just nice to see it's very real. It's not always just what you might hear on a podcast. You always on Facebook, you just see the highlights of somebody's life. They're always doing great things. On BP, sometimes it feels like that too. Yeah, everyone's doing all this cool stuff and I'm struggling here. But the reality is we're all struggling. We're all just trying to make it in this game, and there's ups and downs to everyone's life. And so it's just kind of nice to hear Charlie's story of the entire thing.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right, man. Well, good stuff. Good show. On to the next one.
I'm going to go out and have a baby.
Oh, good luck. You got this.
Is it he who or who he? I don't know.
I have not experienced such things, so there you go. Good luck.
I don't know. I got to figure that out. Second, coach my lady friend here.
Get your escape bag, whatever they call it these days.
I got it. We're good.
All right, you're set. All right, man. Good luck to you.
All right, we'll see you
around.
To
our listeners, thanks for everything, and we'll see you next time on the BiggerPockets podcast. I'm Josh Dorkin, signing off.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.